Trump announces trade deal with South Korea, 15% tariffs and $350 billion investment. Breaking news. President Trump has just unveiled a groundbreaking trade agreement with South Korea, but this deal is far from straightforward. In a bold move, Trump announced a 15% blanket tariff on South Korean exports to the U.S., a significant reduction from the 25% he initially threatened. This move has sparked controversy and left many questioning the implications. But here's where it gets interesting. Trump also revealed that South Korea will invest a whopping $350 billion in the U.S., with the funds being selected by myself as president. This statement has caused a stir, with differing interpretations emerging from Seoul and Washington. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung emphasized the potential for Korean companies to enter the U.S. market in key industries, while also highlighting the importance of mutual benefits. However, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick claimed that the majority of profits from this investment will go to the American people, a statement that has been challenged by Tokyo in a similar context. And this is the part most people miss. Trump also stated that Seoul will purchase $100 billion worth of energy products from the U.S. and invest an undisclosed large sum for their own purposes. This deal seems to favor the U.S., with no tariffs on U.S. goods and a significant reduction in South Korea's effective tariff rate for U.S. imports. The trade agreement also addresses semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and metals, with Lutnick assuring that South Korea will not be treated any worse than other countries in these sectors. So, what does this all mean for the future of U.S.-South Korea relations? Will this deal strengthen the alliance, as President Lee hopes? Or will it create further tensions? The implications are vast, and we want to hear your thoughts. Do you think this agreement is a step towards a stronger partnership, or does it raise concerns? Let us know in the comments. Fed meeting update. Interest rates, trade deals, and market reactions. Federal Reserve decision today. Interest rates remain unchanged as Powell clarifies stance. Live updates. In a significant development, the United States and South Korea have finalized a trade agreement. https www.wsj.com/livecoverage/Fed meeting interest rate decision -07/30/2025 card. U.S. will charge South Korea 15 tariff in New Deal. Trump says MH9WMA, Hay6 Mica, DB0, MU5X, that imposes a 15% tariff on Korean goods. While many American products will enjoy duty-free status in South Korea, President Trump announced on Wednesday. According to the president's post on Truth Social, U.S. products will not be subject to tariffs in South Korea. Additionally, South Korea will invest $350 billion in U.S.-owned and controlled ventures, along with an extra $100 billion in energy purchases. Earlier in the day, the Federal Reserve, as anticipated, kept interest rates unchanged. Chair Jerome Powell indicated no inclination towards reducing rates. https://Fed meeting interest rate decision /07/3/2025 Powell says rate moves depend on totality of evidence. AGTAYFJ PH5PGDEX at the upcoming September meeting. Powell's remarks following the rate decision had an immediate impact on the stock market, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping by approximately 172 points, or 0.4%. Federal Reserve officials maintained the benchmark policy rate. https://economy/central banking/Fed holds rate steady. But two officials back a cut, 6FC17C67, within the range of 4.25% to 4.5%, carefully considering how importers, retailers, and consumers would share the burden of the increased tariffs. Stocks dipped and Treasury yields rose after Powell stated that the central bank had made no decisions regarding a rate cut in September. During his post-meeting press conference, Powell highlighted signs of slowing economic growth, but also noted stability in the labor market. Watch the news conference here. https://www.www.this is where Thea, free, WACH. Also on Wednesday, President Trump intensified his pressure on the Fed to lower interest rates. This incident is sparked U.S. News, claiming he had information that the central bank planned to cut rates in September. In a social media post, Trump also mentioned that the second quarter growth figures exceeded expectations, reinforcing his call for rate reductions. New GDP data revealed that the economy expanded at a 3% rate from April to June. https://www.ws.com. Inflation pressures were slightly higher than expected, contributing to the rise in Treasury yields and the strengthening of the dollar. Meanwhile, Trump escalated tensions with U.S. trading partners by increasing tariffs on Brazilian goods to 50% and imposing new tariffs. https://wsj.com/live coverage interest rate decision 7/30/2025/card Trump administration unveils 50% copper tariffs on copper products, causing the metal's price to plummet. He also targeted India for its ties to Moscow. https://wsj.com live coverage Fed meeting interest rate decision 7/30/2025/card India-Russia relationship extends back decades. Binwa 5 XYXH37KP5YCL announcing a 25% tariff on Indian goods and additional penalties for purchasing Russian arms and energy. https://wsj.com/live coverage Fed meeting interest rate decision 7/30/2025 Trump administration unveils 50% copper tariffs. www.wsj.com/live coverage Fed meeting interest rate decision 7/30/2025 Trump says India. The Indian rupee weakened against the dollar as a result. The president declared that he would not extend Friday's deadline. https://www.wsj.com/live coverage Fed meeting interest rate 207/2025 Trump says Friday's trade deadline won't be done. Trump's new trade deal with South Korea. What you need to know. In a surprising move, President Donald Trump unveiled a fresh trade pact with South Korea, setting the stage for a 15% tariff imposition on Korean goods, just days before the looming August 1st deadline. This announcement comes as a whirlwind in the ongoing saga of international trade negotiations. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump outlined the details of the agreement, stating that South Korea has agreed to inject $350 billion into investments under U.S. ownership and control, with the president himself having the final say. This financial commitment aims to strengthen economic ties between the two nations, albeit under terms that some might find contentious. Previously, in April, South Korea and several other countries were subjected to a reciprocal 25% tariff, a move that was temporarily halted by Trump, sparing dozens of nations from bearing the brunt of such high levies. However, the reprieve was short-lived, as the suspension was set to expire on the very next day. Despite the new tariff being lower than the previously imposed 25%, it still represents a significant increase from the 10% minimum tariff that South Korea and many other nations have been facing since April. This escalation has not gone unnoticed, particularly given its impact on South Korea's economy. The nation's gross domestic product, GDP, contracted by an annual rate of 0.1% in the first quarter of this year, marking the first negative growth in 4 years. Had the 25% tariff taken effect, the economic strain would have been even more severe. Every trading partner of the United States now faces a critical decision: acquiesce to Trump's demands to avoid inclusion on his August 1st worst offenders tariff list, or risk facing steep import duties that could cripple their economies. It's a delicate balance, with leaders around the world realizing that tariffs may never revert to pre-Trump era levels, and that even current rates may not be guaranteed beyond the impending deadline. Brazil serves as a cautionary tale after President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva refused to cave to Trump's demands regarding the legal proceedings against former right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro. Trump responded by hiking tariffs on Brazilian goods by 40 percentage points to a staggering 50%. This drastic measure underscores the potential consequences of defying the U.S. president's directives. Similarly, goods from the European Union and Japan, despite recent trade agreements with Trump, will also face a 15% tariff beginning on Friday. These agreements did provide some relief from sector-specific tariffs, including those on automobiles and pharmaceuticals, but the broader impact remains uncertain. In the case of South Korea, cars imported to the U.S. will be subject to a reduced 15% tariff, as confirmed by Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He further clarified that South Korea would not be penalized more harshly than other countries in terms of semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. However, steel, aluminum, and copper will continue to be taxed at existing rates, signaling a mixed bag for Korean industries. South Korea ranks as the seventh largest supplier of imports to the United States. Last year alone, it exported $132 billion worth of goods to the U.S., with vehicles, auto components, semiconductors, and electronics leading the pack. Conversely, the U.S. exported $66 billion worth of goods to South Korea, primarily in oil, gas, and industrial machinery. Over the past 2 decades, the United States and South Korea have engaged in multiple rounds of free trade agreements, undergoing renegotiations on various occasions, including during Trump's first term in office. As the dust settles on this latest development, only time will tell how these trade dynamics will unfold.